So Lori, whenever you're ready.
I'll let you know.
Okay.
Okay, Murray, we're live.
Okay. Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody this morning and call the meeting to order. And I think we're all in attendance except, well, Nancy and Pat aren't in yet, are they? Okay. Okay,
Yeah,
so I have a resolution then, Tamara, to adopt the agenda.
Be it resolved that the agenda for the special meeting of the council of the municipality of Dysart held on June 22nd be approved as presented.
Mover and seconder. Barry and Carm, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Hearing none, we'll move on to, and I'm going to have a preamble here. I think today, because we have some people away and Walt has to leave at 9:30, we should probably focus on education. And I know staff's been putting some ideas together. And if we could, at the end of the day, today, do the education piece so that we can approve it and get it in a format that can be sent out, can be on social media, because that's the runner to the bylaw. And then we can focus on the bylaw at the regular meeting on Tuesday. So is everybody okay with that? Hearing nothing, silence gives consent. So away we go. Okay, maybe I'll start with you, Carl. On what your ideas would be for a brochure. And I don't know that we can project that or put it up anywhere so we can follow along. Tamara, do we have that ability or?
No, because what we've been doing at this point is we've created a series of posters that we're starting to put out on Facebook. And
okay, can we put those posters up?
I'm not sure. Can somebody project Facebook on here? I don't know if we can right this second, Murray, actually.
Okay.
I
Well, then I guess we're going to have to do a flyer and just come up with ideas. Carl, you probably have the best ideas of what you should do to restore a natural shoreline and what you shouldn't do.
Right. So some of the things that we have been working on is essentially Facebook posts and something that could be made into a poster. And again, we're trying to stay away from the things that go towards propaganda, but things that are actually education that are well-known information. So one of the ones that we're looking at are the ribbon of life information. So the 3 meter buffer and linking to the video provided by terrible with names, that professor, you probably remember her, Murray.
Yeah.
Barb Elliott. Yeah. So that's one of the ones that we're contributing to. That we've created already and it's ready to go. The other one, another one is I think I've titled don't pee in the lake. So pee as in phosphorus, and identifying how phosphorus created from fertilizers, created from septics, from dish soaps and the like are bad for the lake. So stay away from phosphorus. And it's linking to a video which actually allows it's an actual lake that they've introduced phosphorus to. They actually split the lake in half. It's an experimental lake in Canada. They split the lake in half, introduce phosphorus to one portion and not the other, and show how phosphorus actually affects the lake. So it's actually very good information. But those are the two key ones that we're focusing on with regards to education at this point. And if there's other things that we're looking at as to education is a hard component to do. We're essentially piggybacking off of what's already out there until we get a bylaw in place that we can actually educate, these are the requirements of the bylaw. So once we get once we get an actual bylaw in place, we can give actual information as to what's required through the bylaw, those types of things. But at this point, those are the key topics that we're looking at this point with regards to education.
Well, I think those videos are great things, but I think I'm trying to be a little more simplistic here and just come out with something that's in plain English that says you don't run your eaves troughs directly into the lake. Things like that, that you don't, you plant trees if you've taken trees out. I mean, I think that if we had a sheet that we could send out with a tax bill, give to the lawyers, give to the real estate. And when I bought my property, I'm gonna get this sheet and it's going to say to have a healthy lake, here's what you do. And here's what you don't do. And I'm looking for something that a layman can pick up and say, oh, okay, I can follow that. Or I think this is a good idea. And then we come on with you're right, with the videos, social media, all those things to educate again. And they're really strong tools. But the problem is they're not going to get everybody. And if we got something relatively simple, I think it'll resonate. Maybe people that wouldn't see the videos. Any comments from councillors on that, or?
Murray, I got one. So I think it should go out in tax bill because a lot of older people and what don't have, I don't have social media. Barry doesn't have social media. But I think it should be the pros and cons, not the do's and, you have to, or you don't have to do with your lake, like piece of property. I don't think we should tell them what they have to do. We should suggest more than demand. Do you not think?
And that's where I was going, Carm. Just suggestions on what to do. Like you shouldn't run your roof drains directly into the lake. Something that simple.
Yeah.
People can relate to that. Or you don't excavate loose gravel, or and you're allowed a 5-meter walkway or something. Those simple things, I think a layman can pick that up regardless of their status and say, oh, that makes sense, or it doesn't. And I can follow that or I can't. To me, that's a tool that we can, that's not expensive to get out there. And yet it could be very effective, along with the videos, which are really good, by the way. But not, as I say, not everybody's going to see them.
Well, I think we can do both things at the same time, because
Sure, we can. Sure.
the tips that we're putting out would be the same tips we'd probably put onto that list that you're talking, or to the brochure you're talking about.
Right.
It'd all be in one place, so we can, if council has any things that in particular they'd want to see on those lists of suggestions, as you said, Carm, or.
And a simple thing like if you're going to work in the water, you require M&R or MNRF or Trent Severn or whatever the oceans and fisheries, you require those approvals. So right away it's flagged, gee, I can't do that. I've got to get an approval for it. Now, some people aren't going to do that. And that's the ones we want to catch. But I think that if all that stuff is simple, one-liners, I think it'll be pretty effective actually, because we've never really done that at any level as far as shoreline goes. And whether we like it or not, I mean, we need to make the point that, hey, this is your lake, and this is the value that you're going to have in your lake if you keep it pristine. And I think those are. Anyway, I'm doing all the talking here. I want to hear from other councillors. Tammy, your thoughts? Your mic must be off.
Oh, you hear me there? Sorry.
Yeah, can't hear you.
No, I really think we're, going down the right path and it's, there's gonna be some people who are gonna be extremely happy. Some people might not be that happy, but we can listen after this, policy has been passed and learn from it. But I think one thing that we, in this whole process, which, there's been too much time and emphasis spent on the few people that have clear cut their properties over the years. I know we've got a couple and on the lakes I'm on, they've been like that for a long, long time. It doesn't bother anybody. But we're trying now to educate people on not to do that on these new lots, which I think this policy is gonna put that in place. I really think that it's so important that, that also in there with the fertilizing of lawns. Like our septic inspection program is just doing a fantastic job. We're also conscientious about our lakes. We want our lakes to be clean and pristine like they are right now. And I think we're doing the right thing in regard to our septic inspection program. And you can't stop people from putting fertilizer on their lawn right beside the lake, but somehow we can educate them that you're really hurting the lake. And so I just can't say enough about, there's very few of us that own lakefront property that get up in the morning and say, well, I'm gonna go down the lake. What can I do to destroy my lake today? Everybody loves their lake. And when you think of every lot is so different also. So it's really hard for certain rules will fit this lake, this frontage, and it won't fit another frontage. But to me, we're on the right program, and I just hope people will be patient with us and accept it, and we'll listen to as we go along, I think, right, Carl? So that's what I have to say. Thanks very much.
Well, I think Carl's video with the phosphorus, that's a key one, because that's the fertilizers and coming out of the septic. That's really a strong message to people. So, Barry, you have a comment?
Yeah, Murray. So I agree with everything that we're talking about. So we got to educate and we got to get the word out there and get it out as many ways as possible. And we also have to monitor these lakes. So we need to make sure that everybody understands that we're not just walking away from any bylaws here, but we got to keep a really good eye on the lakes. Like, to me, all the lakes are doing fairly well right now. I don't see any problems where people are saying, our quality of water and everything is going way down. We're not getting that feedback from anybody. But we also have to make sure we watch that over the years and make sure people understand that we're really going to watch it. I'm not sure how we go about that or who does, but I know some of the lake associations do it on their own. They do their own studies. But I think as a municipality, we've got to lead that and make sure that, we watch the water quality. And if there's reasons that we think it's going down, then maybe we have to get a little stricter, or we have to put a little more teeth into this. But right now it seems to be holding its own quite well, maybe even getting better because of the septic inspections and stuff like that. So that's my big point, is let's keep an eye on things. And if we have to readjust, then we readjust. So we get the education part out there, we watch things and see how it goes.
Yeah, okay, those are good points, because the lake's good today doesn't mean it's going to be good a year from now, because things can change, and we're so fortunate that our waters turn over. That's probably helped us a lot. Why their quality is staying, because we're getting fresh turnovers every once or twice a year. So okay, those are good points, and there is a program out there now that I think one of the organizations is doing with the county to monitor the lakes on an ongoing basis, which is part of what you're after, Barry. But we need to make sure we look after our lakes here too. So, Carm, have you got anything to add to this?
Well, I agree with Barry that, if you look at the Love Your Lakes survey, the lakes have been either plateauing out or, staying, some going up, but most of the part staying that even. So if we keep looking at that, that's proven that what we've been doing is working, and we don't really need, And then another thing on the naturalization of the shoreline. like lots of the lakes around here used to be all fields around them. Now they've grown up over the years. So what is the natural lake when it was all fields, or now that they're grown in? So that's one thing to tell somebody you have to naturalize your shoreline. If it used to be fields 50 years ago or 75 years ago, I don't know how we go about doing that.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're right. That's the point. There's fortunately,
But that
there
gets
was
back
some
to
of
the-
those, but not a lot of them.
Yeah, that gets back to the one size doesn't fit all, like Walt says, you know, everybody wants to see the lake. That's why they moved here. We can't tell them we can't see the lake.
No. And nobody's trying to do that, I don't think. But to cut everything down front so you
No.
can see the lake, that's wrong too. So,
They can't,
We've gotta-
but
well, the clear cutting's a big problem and bulldozing and amount of equipment used around the shoreline. I'm just looking for points here. And I don't know, maybe I sprung it on you too quickly, but I'm trying to look for a sheet of paper that says, this is what you should do. It'll be followed by the videos that Carl's talking about. And this is what you shouldn't do. Like, this is wrong to run your right off the roof, the shingles, right straight into the lake. How you divert your water? How about using cloth so that runoff doesn't get in the lake? All those little points that contractors know, but they don't always do. And owners need to be responsible. And I think that's a key thing, that no matter who works on your property, ultimately it comes back to the owner. They're responsible for what happens there. So they're the ones that's
no, Murray,
at the end of the day.
we don't have any statistics on how many, since we started the septic inspection program, how many percentage or whatever you want to have failed and had to be replaced? Like, I've heard of quite a few needing done. So do we have that figure so we can say to people, we know this is X amount of septics have failed. So we've, that's how many we've got fixed up, so that the lake's already going to be getting better because of this.
Yeah, and maybe that's something that, I don't know, Carl, you can answer this, but is that something that we could put out on a list of lakes and a list of improvements to the septic systems, the number of improvements on those lakes?
Yeah, it was actually one of the things I was thinking of when you were talking about the do's and don'ts and the septic reinspection program. So if you do refer to the annual report from last year, it
Right.
does give a percentage of the number that passed and failed, and that's itemized out per lake. So you can go to each lake and see this is how many are high risk, how many were low risk, medium risk, those types of things. So we can put information in those do's and don'ts. And it's like, if your septic reinspection is coming up, how to prepare for that. Those are one of, that's another educational component that we can put out.
Right.
But yeah, with regards to the education, we can throw things out there that are already in place. Again, we're not creating anything new with this bylaw other than proposed controls over silt control and retaining walls, those types of things. But things that are already in place, that things that you're allowed to have in your shoreline, like the the decks and patios up to 20 square meters, those types of things. So we can put in there the items that you're allowed to have that you're allowed to do in your shoreline. So we can include that in there as an education component as well, that these are already permitted. We're not, it's not being restricted or regulated at all by the bylaw. It's just information that these are already permitted uses within that shoreline. Yeah, otherwise I'm not without a bylaw. It's hard to come up with a set of with educational components, because a lot of things, like, again, a big item in my mind is the silt control. And without a bylaw, there's nothing that we can really rely on other than, well, it's good practice to do this, but it's difficult to come up with education saying that this is what you have to do, rather than just good practice. It falls outside the realm of what municipalities typically do. It can fall on it's more in the realm of what like lake associations would do with these educational components. But we can we can definitely partner up with lake associations and try and get information out there to lakefront owners and use their information as that educational component. And as I mentioned before, like, we don't want to push propaganda. A lot of it that I see out there is propaganda. A lot of it is good information, so I don't want to dispel any information, but it's that's I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Murray.
Well, it's just so good to hear, like if I were on Lake Winona, for instance, that I can look at Lake Winona after it's been totally inspected and say, gee, there was 20 failed septic systems on Lake Winona. That's a wake-up call. And I think that's going to resonate with the owners there. And, there's going to be some things that are common sense that are not going to be in the bylaw. But if they're pointed out to people, sometimes it triggers, hey, maybe I should be doing that. Pat, I know you joined a little late here. What we're talking about is doing some kind of an education, simple education sheet to show the simple do's and don'ts of how you should be treating your property in relation to the water. And we're just looking for ideas here on what we can do that's going to be simple for a layman to understand. Some of it will be definitely enforced by any future bylaw to have any meaning. But on the other hand, a lot of it, you and I might think it's common sense. But if you moved up here from the city and you're on sanitary sewers and a town water system, you don't maybe understand that stuff. So what may seem simple to those of us that are being here may not be simple to people moving in. So I don't know whether you have any thoughts on that, but what we're trying to do, Carl and staff are putting together some videos on phosphorus and some of those things that are really vital to the program. But we're trying to come up with something, do's and don'ts, simple things. You don't do this, or you should do this. You don't run a big excavator out into the lake. That you'd think that's common sense, but maybe it isn't to some people. Today you can rent equipment, and I see it all the time with people that really any more than know how to start it are running it. So they might think they can drive right out on the shoreline and push dirt out there if they're not suggested that they shouldn't be doing that. So I think it's just, again, it's common sense, but it's education and we all need it. Do you have any comments, Pat?
Yeah, Maria, just again, apologize for being late there, but
No problem.
and I fully agree with the educational segment. I think that's going to be like 95% of the cure from what I've seen. And Carl mentioned siltation earlier on there. And there's no question that does happen, but I don't know how many calls come into the township for silt out the lake because of poor management on site. But I do know in the well drilling business, we've encountered it once where, again, a water well got away on us all in a heartbeat. Some silt went out in the lake. Cottager phoned the MOE. The MOE came up the next morning and they laid it out for us what we had to do. And if we didn't comply, it was a $20,000 fine. So again, the education part is paramount on that note, and I think it keeps it clean and simple and a baseline, but there is other entities out there like the MOE that will handle the siltation problem in terms of best practices. Like you were talking about a minute ago, I think that's going to be the best thing to move forward with the whole process. When we in the water well drilling, I use it as an example again, when Walkerton happened, right? Some people died.
Yeah.
And they shut down the whole the water well drilling industry, and they instilled the wells regulation, which is 903, and worked through that. Well, it took about 4 years to comb the knots out of that, and it's still not very good. But on the same note, what they did is came out with a common practices handbook for well drillers after that, and people that manage water that was more effective than the wells regulation they put in, because it was practical to the people that were doing the work on the site, if that makes sense, but.
No, that makes total sense. And the whole industry paid the price because a couple of people weren't paying attention.
Correct.
So there you go. But anyway, this is why, if, like you say, what came out of that was very positive for the people actually doing the work, because they kept it in layman's terms and kept it fairly simple.
Right.
So where do we go with this now? Like I'm rather
Sorry,
anxious.
Tamara wanted to say something.
Yeah, Tamara.
We failed to mention that Alyssa's drafted a page on our website for us that's specifically focused on shoreline health, where Carl started providing her some links and documents and some of the other videos that other associations have made, so that all the resources can go in one spot, and we'll make sure we also send that out to the lake associations, so they know specifically it's there, because typically they'll take any information they think is useful and share it out through their newsletters as well. I agree the online isn't going to get everybody. We do have, it's going to be a while till we have another tax bill going out, but in the meantime, there's a lot we can do in terms of either making some print copies of things available for people if they go out, or we can bring back some recommendations on that. But I think Carl's looking too for what is it that you want to promote? Like, what do you believe in as your values that you want promoted, so that we don't promote the wrong thing? For example, Walt mentioned fertilizer. Is everybody in agreement that you want to promote no fertilizer? Like, I know there's rules around that anyway based on the product, but are there things, like you said, common sense things you want, to Murray's point, included in these messagings out to people?
Well, certainly comment on that. To me, I guess we can't see what Alyssa's been putting together there, can we?
I actually walked it around and showed everybody while you were talking.
Oh, you did? Okay,
We're talking about.
okay. So we seem to be going around the circle here, but I think it's important that we, I don't know who does this, whether staff do it or we let staff send out something and we get back to them. But I think it's important that, like you say, we don't have a tax bill going out, but we do have building permits being issued every day. We have real estate deals going down every day. We have lawyers handling things.
Yep.
If those things are available to hand out to new owners
Mhm.
or to anybody putting an addition on or whatever, and they read it, if we catch half of the people that sincerely read this thing and follow it, or try to follow it, at least, I think that's a big plus.
Mhm.
If we can stop one doing the wrong thing, for instance, filling the shoreline, say you got a mud bottom and you put 50 loads of sand in there, like every time something happens to the lake, it changes the lake. Whether you roll a big stump in it, it's all covered with mud, everything affects things. So I think the more we tell people the right thing to do, and then point out the wrong thing to do on the other side of the page, then I think that's going to be a benefit. Because if you don't understand it and you get a big complicated, people will always say that bylaws are complicated. They're complicated because you got a whole list of definitions, and if you don't know enough to read and then go back to the definition, you get lost. And a lot of people do get lost. I know, I've been watching it for years. So the thing to do is give them something simple, and then follow it up with all the good information that we need to, our position on it. So I think that's where Carl's headed with this, but we just need to come up with that simple sheet of do's and don'ts. And I don't know how we're going to generate that.
I think we could put something together to provide to you at the next meeting, or maybe not Tuesday, but yeah, I don't think that's an issue. And I like your idea of being able to hand it out with building permits and planning when people are here in person, and we can certainly provide something digitally on best practices.
So I don't know Carl would be issuing 200 building permits at least a year on waterfront properties.
That's a good question. Probably, yeah, probably around there.
Yeah. Well, that's 200 people that are going to see it that didn't see it last year. And wouldn't see it next year. So I think that's a really good start. I'm just looking for ideas here. And I'm suggesting to us today that I mean, we need to do this ASAP, in my opinion, to get it out. And then the bylaw will come after that. And it can, I don't know where you are with that, Carl, but I know we had another lengthy some concerns that I passed on to Carl. He's answered them very well. There's some things that are in our zoning bylaws and official plan that we can't change right now. And so we have to follow that. No, but there's also lots of exceptions to allow people to have some freedom to meet those conditions. So I think that's something that when you read it, you say, oh boy, there's a 30-meter setback for trees or something. Well, you have to understand all of it before you just jump to the conclusion that you can't cut a tree down, because that's not the case here. So there is exceptions. So I just want to keep this thing moving. We do need some kind of regulation, as Barry has said, but we don't want it so that it's so complicated that people have an excuse to say, well, I didn't understand it. We want something that's
So Mary, are we gonna look at like is Carl gonna develop a list for us of the do's and don'ts kind of thing?
yes,
And then is it my understanding then that we're still gonna do a bylaw?
yes.
Or we're gonna pick out some points of that list that we feel should be in the bylaw, or what are you thinking there? Is that what?
Well, I'm thinking that that's something Carl will do. And with like he's done a lot of work on this, and he's got a lot of the answers, I think. But we just need to make sure that like our bylaw is not going to be perfect first time out, but that's why you can amend bylaws.
Right.
So when we see something's missing that we should have picked up, or we got too much of something in there too regulatory, then we can change it. But we need to get something in place. Like people are saying to me, well, you didn't go with the county bylaw because you said you wanted to make it simpler. So what are you going to do? Well, so we are going to do something, but we want to make sure that we get the education out first, and then do something with it. You can argue that maybe we don't need a bylaw. There's lots of people that argue that. But on the other hand, you can't have education and you can't enforce anything. For people that really do want to violate it, there's no tool to straighten them out, to fix it. And that's the only way why we need a bylaw of some sort.
Murray, would there be a chance where I don't know if there's urgency to get a bylaw passed that, you know, in a heartbeat coming up here, can we put out this information package to, like you said, tax bills, building permits, realtors, right? Where a lot of changeover happens first, and next year, can we see the results of that? And if we find that there's a lot of violations and we have no teeth, or people are running away with the show, then we put a bylaw in place. On that note, I don't know in my own mind, like I mentioned to you before, like if the MO, you mentioned about putting 100 loads of fill in the lake and all this type of stuff, which has been done in the past. But again, the M&R gets called and they don't put up with much on that note. So that
No, they
whole
don't.
framework is already looked after on that side. And to me, again, we're doing our septic inspection program and everything else. So there's all good things going on here.
Oh, there is, for sure.
On the same note,
And yeah, and you know what? I'd like to get the education piece out, even the simplified version of it, right away, like in the next month or so, so that people see that. Now, whether there's a simple bylaw that gets amended frequently when as things occur, that's possible too. Like you say, I don't know that we can do nothing till next year, without to be council's decision. But I think at least we could put something in place that's reasonable this year. You okay with that, Pat?
What if we bring you back a presentation in the next month or so on just outlining what it is that we've gathered in terms of information and what we've done so far to get it out and see if you guys want to add to it? And
Can we do that before the next meeting, do you think? Or think that's too tight?
well, we've already started, like we've got the website drafted and we've got social media posts out already and we've got website posts out already, but we've been putting it out as snippets, one piece at a time. Like this week it was don't consider planting
Right.
plants along your shoreline,
Mhm.
basically, just simple one at a time. Cause sometimes some people digest simpler things and having to read a whole thing all at once too. So we're just trying to attack it from different ways, but I think the gist of it is making sure that what we put out there is what you guys believe in.
Practical. Yeah.
Practical. But I think that I could be wrong, or maybe I'm trying to oversimplify this, but I think that a simple do's and don'ts list wouldn't infringe on the bylaw and could be something that could be done fairly quickly. Tamara, or do you want to comment on that?
Oh, yeah, we can. That's what we're just saying. You keep asking if there's things in particular you want. I've heard a few things. And we do have lists, like we've got draft lists going, but we just want to make sure that what we put out there is what council agrees with, because some of it might follow through in terms of bylaw direction. If we send out one message, but then you don't want that included later, it might conflict. So we could
Well-
draft something and bring it to the next meeting for you or circulate.
I'd like to see us move with the education piece. And if we could have a look at that preliminary list.
Yeah.
Before the next meeting and comment on it, maybe we might even have to change it, but we don't need to print 10,000 copies.
No.
We can
no,
print
there's
whatever we need
ways
to
Get it
and
out.
change it.
Yeah. Yeah, we could work on that probably next week now. We're pretty booked this week. but Next week we could get at that and get it
Okay.
out to you.
Okay,
Yeah, Murray, and council here and everybody. I just like to say that, you know, we're really passionate about trying to do the right thing here. And when you think about it, and I don't know the number, but there's a lot of lakes in Dysart. How many lots, new build lots would there be really available? I think what a lot of your permits are for like somebody's bought 1,000 square foot cottage that's right, yeah, tear downs, and you're rebuilding them. And I think with Carl's and his program that he has in place, that we're really going to be catching a lot of potential, issues that are going to be harmful to our lakes. So I really think that we're really on a great path here in regard to keeping our lakes pristine like they are. And like you take the septic systems at these tear downs where they were located, you're locating them now in the right position, right place, the right size, number of bedrooms. So there's a lot of positives here. And when I think about it, these reports come out that was 75% or whatever, the shorelines were okay. To me, it's even higher than that. So I don't think, we shouldn't be beating ourselves up. The people who own lakefront property here in the last 50, 75 years have done a darn good job of caring about their lakes. And no, we're trying to make it better. So thank you.
okay, well, those are good points. And I do think that was one of the key points that we were always making, that the biggest problem is people tear downs with big cottages. When they build the big cottage, what do they clear? Are they going to, what are they going to do with the runoffs? Those are, to me, those are the things that the education that's really needed. And of course, a lot of that's got to do with contractors. So obviously we would include this list with the contractors who probably already know it. But again, they're guided by their customers. If, so it's, you know, we're dealing with 2 or 3 levels here, so we have to, make sure we're consistent and, keep it reasonable. So, Carl, I think a lot of this lands on your plate for the do's and don'ts. And I'm sure you've thought about it. So it would kind of be a point by point kind of list. Is that what you're thinking?
It very well could be, like, we've seen lists, I think we looked at a list from CHA that they have out right now, the, you know, the do's and don'ts kind of list. So we can do something similar to that, where we have a do and it correlates to a don't, or other way around, a don't and then correlates to a do, how you actually.
Maybe you want to be positive all the time.
Possibly, yeah, it's,
Yeah.
We'll look at options for sure. I don't have a specific vision in mind for this right now, but we can definitely work through it and see what's see what we can come up with.
Can I ask Carl a couple questions?
Sure.
First of all, about the do's and the don'ts, I thought of that too, always being having the positive stuff, but I also think that if you said don't do this, and I feel like people are, if they, oh my God, I did that. So it might register a little bit better to have the don'ts as well. And also, Carl, in the last like couple of years, has there been how often do you see something that shouldn't be happening, but there wasn't a bylaw or a rule or regulation?
Again, I think one of the biggest things that I come across every day is piles of dirt within the shoreline setback. That's probably the biggest issue. That, again, we get a torrential rain, where's that sand going? We get high winds, where's that sand going? Those are essentially some of the things that I'm looking at. I see every day that we can have regulations on. Again, otherwise we have the EP lands. Again, we don't permit anybody to build within the EP lands, but things like, you know, fill within the EP lands, those are things that we can't control at this time. It's not things that happen every day, but it does happen, and maybe we need a bylaw to regulate something like that we currently don't have.
Okay, I definitely agree with everything that we've been discussing, but I think one way that you can also, I mean, it's just common sense, but there are things naturally happen, like beaver dams breaking in the wild, and it'll wash out the whole one section of wherever it lands in the lake. So that means that you shouldn't be importing sand or anything else that's not conducive to that lake. Like only, like it's like the signs that you say, don't bring firewood into here. Like just simple stuff like that. Like if it happens in nature, then yeah, it might be all right. But if it doesn't happen in nature, like you can't take sand from, 10 miles away and bring it to the lake. That's not going to happen in nature either. So I think that might be another like a common sense thing. And also the cottagers, once the cottagers know, they are very good at self-monitoring their lake. Like Pat said, like it didn't take them more than a day to figure out that, oh, we're going to call the MOE. So I feel like the education is really good because especially if the neighbor goes over to the brand new homeowner or cottage owner, they're going to tell them, especially if we have all this education out. So I think that's a really good idea. Education is key for sure.
Those are good points, Tammy. And the other thing is that one of the problems that I hear all the time is I'd like to call somebody about this, but they're going to know I'm the neighbor and I'm the one that made the call. So I'm going to have an enemy for a neighbor, and so that's why it's important that when we have feet on the ground, that they notice this stuff and they deal with it. I'm not trying to put more pressure on the staff, but the staff know what needs to be done. And when they see a pile of dirt that's gonna wash directly into the lake, or somebody bringing in, something from another area, we've just had that happen, by the way. We've got, weeds that should never be in Halliburton County here now because we've trucked them in to fill a swamp, in one place, and, now we've got them here. So, you know, that's a big issue. It's no different than people not washing their boats and bringing, species of fish that shouldn't be here too. So, I mean, it's hard to you can't monitor and catch it all, but education maybe, will stop some of it, and that's what we got to be hopeful for. Okay, Walt, you have to leave soon.
Yes, I'm sorry about that, but I probably got another 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's go around and make sure that we're on the right page here, that we're going to produce a list soon for council to critique. And then we're going to do something, even though it may need amended, we're going to do an information sheet and make sure it goes out to everywhere we can get it out, and through every source that we have. And that's a start. And then that can be followed by work that goes on next month. So any comments then? Are we on the right page here or not? Barry, let's start with you.
Yeah, I'm good. I want to see that list, and then we can look at the list and say, this is, if we're gonna have a bylaw, we better put this point, this point, and this point on it, and keep it as simple as possible. Make it the most important points if need be, and then we'll see where the bylaw goes. I mean, I don't want it to be very complicated. I can tell you that. It's got to be pretty simple. I know most of the people that I've talked to, some of them are dead set against a bylaw at all. But I do get, we need something, we need a little something there for some ideas and some do's and don'ts, but yeah, let's see the list. And then we can take points out of that, and definitely the education part of it, by all means, like full speed ahead on that for sure.
Okay. Carm?
Yeah, I agree with Barry. Let's just get a simple sheet out we can all look at, and then we'll decide from there the key points to put in the bylaw. Let's keep it the bare minimum, keep it simple, and something people can understand.
Tammy, you have something to add?
Definitely the same. All of those are great points.
Pat?
Yep, I'm on the same page as everybody, Murray.
Good, thank you. Walt?
Yeah, I'm for sure on the same page, and I just can't thank Carl enough for all the work he's done on this and how close we are to getting something out. I know it's like probably going to be amended, but I think we're really on the right path here. Thank you.
Well, we're on a path anyway, and maybe it's we could have put the bylaw out first and then realized that we have to change that 3 or 4 times because we didn't do it right. And this is the last thing we need to do, is follow the path that people don't understand. Like, I'm sorry, but 23 pages of a bylaw, layman's not going to understand that. And it's going to take a lot of people to interpret it and enforce it. So, and then again, it's neighbor tell about the neighbor, and those things are not good bylaws. But if we can take the responsibility of having a bylaw that we can enforce, what we actually see on the ground, then I think that's a big plus for Dyser. So I don't know what I'm sorry that we had a meeting so early this morning and didn't get into the meat of the bylaw, but I think this is more important to get this out. I think I hear that council thinks it's important to get it out too. So, Walt, Carl, have you got something else? I don't want to put an end to the council meeting already, but there's no point in going into the bylaw until we get this done.
Yeah, I think we've got some direction here going forward. Now, just on the current bylaw without the recitals page and the typical enforcement page is only 2 pages long.
Yes.
It's definitely not a complicated bylaw by any means. If we start picking out a bunch of items from a list, it might start complicating that bylaw and make it lengthy. That's only precaution. So we're gonna think about that when we're creating that list to see maybe have some insight into that list as we're creating that bylaw, just so that we're not picking things that shouldn't be in a bylaw in that list. It's, again, I don't have the vision yet, but hopefully I get there shortly.
Well, you know, and that's why I said, you're not gonna put all the things in the do's and don'ts in a bylaw. You're right. We don't want to complicate that. I think 2 pages is enough for people to understand. So let's keep it down to that. Like, there's all kinds of things that go in the do's and don'ts that don't need to go in a bylaw. They're common sense. And if people know about them, like Tammy said, they'll maybe say, gee, I shouldn't have done that, or I was going to do that, but I see now that I shouldn't. That's where we've got to get to people, is so that they know how to treat their property. And I think that this is the way we're going to do it, be successful. We won't be able to measure this. You can never measure this, but you can't measure all the time how many complaints you had on a bylaw either, because a lot of people won't squeal on their neighbors. And if the lake association doesn't catch it, it doesn't happen. So a lot of people do, and I know from being on the lakes that people do get away with things. If you want to do it at night and you dump a load of sand in, probably going to get away with it. But you know, we've got wake boats running down through the lakes. We've got fence severing, putting the water up and down. We got lots of issues, but fortunately, we've survived them for a long time. And as long as we continue with the septic and the phosphorus and making things better, then as long as we're going in the right direction, then that's about all we can hope for. It's when we start going in the wrong direction that we got a problem. So I don't, so I think Carl knows where he's going now, or when he gets the vision. Maybe you'll sleep well tonight, Carl, and you'll get the vision. But
Melissa and I'll work with them on it too, once
yeah,
the meat of
yeah.
it. I do have a resolution if you want me to
Sure.
read it for you based on your discussion. Did you want me
I'm
go
sorry to drag you folks who have got work to do, but you probably can go back to work, right?
Do you want me
Okay,
to read the resolution, Marie?
Yeah,
Okay. Be it resolved that staff or council direct staff to create an informational brochure and online educational campaign to promote shoreline health.
okay, we have a mover and seconder. Barry and Carm, all in favor? Carried. Okay. So I guess we're into, is there any other comments before we adjourn? We may think we didn't accomplish anything, but I think we did this morning. Probably should have done this a month ago, but we didn't. So confirming bylaw then?
Be it resolved that bylaw number 2023-59 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the special council meeting held on June 22nd be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and the corporate seal attached here too.
Mover and seconder? Walt? And Pat, all in favor? Carried. And then we have a resolution to adjourn.
Be it resolved that council adjourn its special meeting held on June 22nd at 9:21 a.m.
Mover and seconder? Carm and Pat, all in favor? Carried. Sorry it took so little time, but I think we've got to do one step at a time here and get it right. So I think this is an important one.